Welcome to the beginning of the next conversation I had with my JW friend. Just a little warning that this is probably not a good conversation to listen to with children in the room. Some of the content my friend brings up is not appropriate for them to hear. It's not graphic or anything like that, just topics that are not ideal for children to hear about. They may ask you a lot of questions that they're not ready for the answers to quite yet. As usual, we begin by catching up on personal matters, which, of course, I'm not going to be sharing here. Pretty much every time we do that, she uses it as an opportunity to launch into more promotion of the Watchtower's Paradise Earth teaching. Today was no different. So I decided to specifically ask her about what she imagines Paradise Earth to be like. I have to admit, probably at least half of her answers were completely outside of anything I would have ever expected to hear from her. I was surprised by her somewhat ongoing focus on, shall we say, carnal things. But she kept going on and on about it. I'm wondering if she had just watched a Watchtower video or read an article along the same lines, so with it fresh in her head, she might have wanted to just regurgitate it as much as she could at the time. I tried to do a search on their website to see if something obvious showed up that might have been what she was watching or reading at the time. I couldn't find anything specific, but that's because the search results were a massively long list. They sure talk about this subject a lot. Or possibly she thought I was going to ask her if people will be naked in the new Paradise Earth, which I didn't, by the way. So maybe she was trying to address it from that angle? Hard to say for sure. To start off, I find it very interesting that she always talks about getting to be in a Paradise Earth like it was for Adam and Eve. But when you press in on that a bit, she really doesn't think it will be much like the Garden of Eden at all. With all the long caveats and novel ideas, it ends up not sounding much like paradise, does it?
Well, I just am grateful that I have that hope that there will come a time when we won't have all these problems.
That's for sure.
And we'll be living on a perfect paradise earth, and just like Adam and Eve had in the beginning. And that's so encouraging.
So, let me ask you about that. So do you think that we'll be then made like Adam and Eve?
Will be what?
We'll be made to be like Adam and Eve were?
No, not necessarily. No, I don't think so. No, more than likely not. Don't forget, Adam and Eve were the only ones on the earth at that time.
Yeah, but I mean just like, how do I say it? Just like individually, as people, to be made just to be exactly like them. I mean, yes, there will be more than two, but
well, if we reason, I think I look at it this way. If I can explain it, I look at it this way: that Adam and Eve were the only ones, so they were one flesh. And they could see each other naked, and they could satisfy their urgings. And when Adam saw how perfect Eve looked, and he had wished to have a relationship with her, well, there was nobody around to view him, in that situation.
I'm sorry, what? There was no one to view Adam and Eve having relations? What on earth made her even think of that? And what does it have to do with my question? If you're an XJW, maybe you can shed some light on this, because it really makes no sense to me at all how she ended up down that path. Did my question sound like I was asking her about relations as husband and wife? Because that's not at all what I was trying to ask about.
So I think as time went on, and of course he gave mankind the desire to appreciate each other. so as the world increased in numbers, I think it would be a logical assumption that because we're given free will, we would say, well, no, if I walk around naked, my neighbor, and I'm not going to be fat and sloppy and overweight or whatever, because I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to maybe entice my neighbor, and I don't want to.
Okay, this whole part still makes me laugh. It's good to know that in Paradise Earth, we won't be fat and sloppy. But because we all look so fantastic, we better cover up so that we don't cause our neighbor to stumble. Also, a quick side note. We touched on this again in a more recent conversation, and she told me that when people are recreated on Paradise Earth, initially they have the same worn down, sick, fat, or old bodies as when they died. And it basically takes time for them to become healthier or younger, sort of morph into the ideal body. Anyway, this line of thought is starting to make me think she was expecting me to ask whether she believes people will be naked on Paradise Earth, like Adam and Eve were in the garden. And I may have considered asking her that at some point, but I never actually did, as it wasn't really the focus of my questions. But even if I had, it's interesting that her entire argument against it was apparently related to sex, sort of making it sound like it's pretty much always a sinful thing. And apparently, sin will always be a problem in Paradise Earth when we're all perfect. Wow.
What am I going to do to be a good neighbor and not encourage him? I need to cover myself up. And I uncover myself only for my husband. So I think we would reason on that. And I think over time we'd reason and draw conclusions on things and do what our conscience tells us. That's why God implanted into the conscience so we could make good decisions.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. So you still have you still could make somebody else sin if you're not careful.
Yeah, we're given free will, so we could, yes.
Okay.
We're always dependent on Jehovah God, and will always be answerable to Him. And He is the supreme universal sovereign, so He has the right to set the standards of justice and righteousness.
Right.
And we should now try to meet up with Him to those standards. We can't because we're imperfect, but once we're perfect, we will probably find it easier to live up to His standards.
So is that perfect then, if we're only hoping to maybe be able to get closer to that standard?
If we're hoping, well, we hope for something that is an assurance. As the definition of faith in the Hebrew Scriptures, Hebrews 10 and 1 there. It says faith is the assured expectation of things not seen, but perceived. So
that didn't actually answer my question, did it? I mean, it sounds like another deflection to me. I was asking about what perfection looks like, and she sidestepped over to the Watchtower's definition of hope. I do understand that this is probably more of the standard Watchtower reasoning to get around what the Bible actually teaches about sin, perfection, salvation, heaven, etc. But it really sounded to me more like a sidestep from the actual question. So then wouldn't that be a sure thing?
That's a sure thing, yeah.
A sure thing that there would...
Adam and Eve had a perfect...
Right, that there would be no more sin then? Wouldn't that be a sure thing once we're perfected, that we wouldn't sin anymore?
Well, that's why we have a good... Adam and Eve were... Just look back at Adam and Eve. They were perfect. what they sinned.
Well, they were good. It actually doesn't say they were perfect anywhere. It just says they were good.
They were perfect. Yes, God said it was.
He said good.
It was good.
Yeah.
Which in his standards would be perfect.
But not perfect like he's perfect.
Well, he made people human, and he's a spirit person. So he made mankind like himself, that he has a desire to be spiritual, and he has a conscience implanted in him so that he should know right from wrong, that he should be able to decipher right from wrong. And
but can God sin?
Yeah, sorry.
Can God sin?
Can God sin? No.
No. Okay. So we're not like him.
Well, we're not perfectly like him, no.
Yeah.
We have qualities like him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we are. We have qualities of him. It's just like a child who has some genetic makeup of a parent. He doesn't have all the genetic makeup. He's not a clone of the father. He's a...
Yeah.
And so if we were exactly like God, we would be clones of God. And that's not what God had in mind.
Okay. So I guess that's... yeah, because it doesn't seem to make sense as far as, what the scripture talks about perfect being.
What does your concept of that is?
Well, perfect and paradise, I think, would include no sin. Like, I look forward to eternity without sin. I will never have to worry about falling short, dishonoring Jehovah, hurting other people, having wrong thoughts, anything like that. If I can be perfected to be made like Christ.
That's certainly true. That is true. Because nowadays, we don't forget, we are in an environment that is ruled by Satan the devil.
But
the very air is making us prone to sin.
But does Satan make you sin, or do you sin because you choose to sin?
Well, but it's like take for example, if you have a person who is prone to let's say looking at undesirable pictures on the internet.
Mm-hmm. See, now, this is what got me wondering where her mind was at, because she's gone back to more discussion about sexual sin, and she's not done yet.
And is sort of inclined that way. He's a male, he's got a lot of testosterone, so he's inclined to, he feels he wants to do that. But look at the world around you. There's sexy women selling cars. There's sexy women selling vitamins. There's naked women, running around all over the place. There's shows on TV that are completely naked. There are reality shows, supposedly.
Yeah.
And the environment of the world is do this, satisfy your urging, satisfy your heart.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
That's an encouragement.
But I guess the thing is, like, even in a world where women are totally covered up, men still lust, right? So that's like a sin nature that we have.
But that's because, of course, you see the world around us is so preoccupied with sex, and that just is in the forefront all the time. But you think of a world that you're living in where there's no overdue emphasis on sex, and marriage is an honorable thing, and it's not all right to have friends with benefits.
Yes. Would you have ever guessed that she even knows what the term friends with benefits means? But it is in the literature, so maybe that's how?
Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There would be less encouragement encouragement to do these things, because now the trend is, well, it's okay to do that. You're not sinning. It's okay to do that.
Oh, sure, that's definitely our culture. But when I look back, like we've had cultures like that in the past, where
Yes.
where there was this people were properly covered up and they weren't promoting sex, and they there was this sort of higher value in the culture. And yet sin still abounds because it's in our heart, right? It's who we are.
Yeah, because we're imperfect.
Right. And so if we're perfected, then that sin would be the sin nature would be gone then, right?
But then that would mean, though, then that you would not have free will.
How so?
Because that somehow, somehow you're saying that in the new world or the new system, that God is going to change us so that we won't be doing bad things. So our free will be taken away from us.
But how is it free to sin? What freedom is that?
That is your choice, and you need to have a choice. God
Why?
gave that, how He dignified mankind over animals, because He gave them choices.
Well, but so you think that if you didn't have what you call the freedom to sin, then you wouldn't have freedom? Because I'm thinking that would be the freest of all, to be free from sin.
Well, our love for Jehovah molds us to, the more we love Jehovah and the more we see Jehovah as a living spirit creature that is overlooking us. We talked when I mentioned, I think last time, that he resides in the heavens. He's observing all mankind. He's watching everybody to help them, not to hurt them and not to condemn them, but to assist them. You see, there you could look at it that when you read a scripture like in Jeremiah, where it says, "The eyes of Jehovah are searching all around." Well, you could take that as being a condemnation. Oh, He's looking to find fault. But that's not what that scripture says. You see, so it depends on how you read it, how you look, how you decipher it.
What scripture was that?
It's in Jeremiah. Is it in Jeremiah? No, I don't know. I think it's in Chronicles.
Okay.
I'd have to search that one out. But it's a passage that was, I think referring to King David.
Hang on, let me see if I can find it. 2 Chronicles?
Sounds
16?
familiar. Is it?
For the eyes of Yahweh run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show Himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect towards Him.
Yeah, that's the one. That's second. What is it? 29. 2 Chronicles 29.
2 Chronicles 16.
Oh, 16.
Verse 9.
Verse 9. I knew there was a 9 in there.
You're way better with numbers than I am.
I get numbers, but they get mixed up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the one. So we have, as I say, it depends on how you look at the picture, you see. But so we have this, as I say, we're in God's image, and certainly God can do something wrong if He wants to, but He doesn't want to because
He can? Just a quick note about her use of this verse. I didn't point it out at the time, but she was using it very much out of context and basically as a way to suggest that Jehovah is just such a nice, caring God that He can turn a blind eye to sin. So in her eyes, He's not truly a just and holy God. I bring this up because I've noticed Watchtower does this very often, making much of man and very little of God, and specifically little of our sin and little of His holiness. We'll pick up right here next time and explore her belief that God can actually sin if he wanted to, but just chooses not to.